Welcome to PowerUp podcast, the podcast that seeks to empower and dismantle, giving us the power and confidence to question, deconstruct, rebuild, and expand in life. I'm your host, Amma Rouge, voiceover and multidisciplinary artist, well-being advocate, food and book geek with over 14 years of movement-centered experience.
I am your host, Mesma, artist, choreographer, yogi and coach with a passion for alchemy, creativity, transformation and workplace wellness.
We recognise that we can't dismantle and empower or be empowered without first learning ourselves, diving deeper to unlearn the harmful, restrictive and unprogressive. It's an ongoing practice and journey for us all, which is why we created this podcast.
Our show features guests doing the work to enlighten, deconstruct and power up in their own magical ways.
We're going to be having conversations around the power of healing, transformation, well-being and creativity, and how they feed our personal and collective evolution, how they help us power up. We are back with our second episode, talking about imposter syndrome, all things imposter syndrome. And yeah, we're happy that we're doing this. We hope you're happy that we're doing this. The more we talk about it, the more we remove the taboo. And today we're here with someone that we're super excited to chat with. That is Isaac Ouro-Gnao. He's a Togolese-British dance and writing-based multidisciplinary artist and freelance journalist. He creates empathetic and thought-provoking work rooted in magical realism and Africanfuturism, with a focus on themes of childhood, memory, and mental health. His impact in the hip-hop theatre and contemporary dance world has been multifaceted, working as a performer, voice artist, scriptwriter, and marketer for esteemed dance theatre artists and companies. His writing has appeared in the form of features, reviews, and poetry in publications such as Lolwe, The Stage, RAD's Dance Gazette, BlackInk, Poetry Birmingham Literary Journal, and more. Isaac is a member of Body Politic's board of directors and is a mental health advocate through Mind Charity's Young Black Men Steering Group. Props. Isaac is currently studying creative arts and mental health at Queen Mary University of London. Isaac's pronouns are he, him. Welcome to Power Up, Isaac.
Welcome, Isaac. Such a joy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
So gassed. And there are not many males that we've had on the show, right, Belle?
Yeah, true, Amma. And I feel very, very blessed to have Isaac being one of the first to join us.
Yeah, and I must say it's not intentional, actually. We have just intuitively selected guests that we would like on the show.
Good to be here. It's exciting. And it's quite interesting, like the topic is imposter syndrome, and just hearing my own bio read back to me just made me feel like, wait, did I do that? Oh God, cringe. No, stop reading. all of the things just popping up in my head. So yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about that.
Honestly, you're so inspiring, Isaac. Like, you know, just how multidisciplinary you truly are multidisciplinary, and you know, having worked with you in various forms, like you are truly talented in every way, in every aspect. And I suppose, like, you know, I've kind of every now and again seen that imposter syndrome show up, and you know, I have a very similar kind of, there's similarities in our story in terms of that kind of more academic background, and then just not quite feeling like, you know, having those moments within dance of like, do I really belong here? But I just want to say, like, you know, big open arms, you so belong here. And it's such a joy to have you in the dance world. I think the dance world really needs you.
I appreciate that. And it's something I've actually come to terms with quite recently, with being multidisciplinary, and even get to the point where, you know, I've written this bio so many times. It's like, what do I call myself? Dance artist, performer, poet, writer, all of these things. And it's like finding a way to put all of these things together to kind of make sense to who I am. And the writing and academic thing is something I've struggled with as well, because for the longest time I thought, oh no, there is a right way to be a dance artist. There's a right way to be a performer, and to create, I have to create from body. I have to create in the space. But I've always struggled with making material from just like going in the room and you just dance. And I think it's because I've been influenced by a lot of artists that work that way, or I've been in the process of a lot of choreographers that work that way, where you just go into the studio and you just start moving your body, you just go. So kind of trying to apply that for myself. I couldn't do it, and I thought there was something wrong with me. Like, what's going on? I've got 3 hours in this space, and obviously, like, resources are limited, so I need to make the most of it. But I just sit there thinking, I don't know how to approach this. And it's only recently that I've thought I can embrace my writing as a starting point rather than an addition. And I think that has definitely helped kind of become more of the person I envision myself to be. Because, yeah, it's okay to have different approaches. And I knew that, but there's a difference between knowing it and embodying that knowledge. Like, yeah, you can start from writing words and writing a creative like story or short story or poetry and going from there. And that has been quite liberating in terms of this idea of imposter syndrome. So it's quite interesting just to start off of that. There's a lot already packed into this idea of multidisciplinary and like the bio.
Yeah.
Can I just say that is so inspiring for me to hear, as well as someone who also has always felt, and I'm still on that journey of like unraveling that idea that there is a right way to do X.
7 in the house, just saying.
To do X, Y, and Z, and the same, with in many different areas. But I can totally empathize with what you're saying about this idea of there's a right way to be a dancer, there's a right way to approach it, and also someone who writes and who really enjoys writing and who's been working over the last couple of years to integrate my writing into my dance practice and my creative movement work. It's really inspiring to hear that, the starting point can be your writing. It doesn't have to be your body. It doesn't have to be going into a space and just pulling stuff out of your body. And there are other approaches and they're all valid.
Absolutely.
There is no right way. They're all the perfect way, exactly as they are.
And Ella and I both had this bio moment as well, because there's an episode where we read each other's bios out to intro each other. I think it was the Creative Identity series we did, and we were both like, oh my God, it sounds so weird when someone else reads your bio back to you. Like, what? Is that real? Is that all me? So yeah, I feel that as well. But yes, it is all you. And you are that brilliant and that great. And it can all exist in the same space. And you're also allowed to still be on the journey as well.
And so I think it'd be really lovely, Isaac, if you're up for it, for the listeners to just hear about kind of your journey with imposter syndrome and how that might have shown up for you along this journey.
I can think of 2 examples that kind of incorporate large parts of my multidisciplinariness. So the first one, I'm not sure if I should drop names, so I won't, but I auditioned for a hip-hop theatre dance company. So they had like open auditions. I went in, got an invite, went to that, and it was quite brutal, because I think, one, my expectations of them being a fan of their work was one. So I'm already thinking, okay, I have to be this prepared. I have to be this physically engaged. I have to be this creative. Getting into the space, things are actually quite chilled. It was a nice experience, nothing too tasking. There was a lot of like chemistry-based exercises just to see how you work well. Me and like the other auditionees work with the company members already. And for the first time in my dance journey at that point, I think this was 2016, I thought, I actually feel like I have a good chance where I'm getting to know myself as an artist. FYI, I started doing professional dance 2015. Before that, it was just kind of self-taught workshops, things like that, in terms of performance work anyway, in a professional sense. I'm sure we can unpack that as well. But anyway, doing that in 2015. So in 2015, I thought, okay, cool. So I went into that space, walked out of it quite confident, and I didn't get the gig. And I asked for feedback, and I didn't get it because, resources, I didn't have time. And for the longest time, I felt invalidated. Like, for me, this was the epitome of what it was to be a hip-hop theatre artist. I was in that space. I felt comfortable in that space. Not in a, cocky way or, nothing like that. It was starting to feel like you belong in that space because these are movers that you aspire to and these are movers that you think you look like, kind of. Not getting that was like, oh, okay, maybe I'm not as good as I thought. Maybe I'm maybe I'm not as good as I thought. Maybe I'm not at that level. So that took a shot, and then from then on, like, the imposter thing kicked in anything else I did after that. It was, I'm not going to go for that because I don't think I'll get it. I just need to step back away again and practice, kind of like turtle up. I need to focus on myself, work on myself. And I stopped taking chances. And because of that, I think I kind of slowed down on, trying to improve myself as an artist. So that has had like a lasting impression. Couple that with a tour from a different company, Body Politic. This was Father Figurine. This was the 2019 tour. So I was working as the marketing manager of the tour, as well as performing in the performance, Father Figurine. And the performance I wrote, so I was the scriptwriter for that. There was a period of time where choreographers had other responsibilities, so I ended up taking like a movement director role where I was actively engaging in like creating. There was a huge support system there, definitely. Like Emma Jane, the director of Body Politic, was really good with that, like just making sure I have the capacity for it. And at that point I thought, I do, because these are skills I have and I'm willing to put them together. But as the process started, I just thought, wow, am I just blagging my way through this? Like, okay, sure, I can do X, Y, Z, but doing all of them together just felt like a quite daunting task. And I would beat myself up every night, like, I'm not doing a good job because I'm not giving myself time to work on why it's taking, like, it's impacting the other. And I just felt like I shouldn't be doing what I was doing. I had no business trying to be all of these things at once. So the multidisciplinariness was like, okay, maybe I should streamline. Maybe I should stop one or the other. And I kept bouncing in between. Okay, you know what? Let me just stop dancing. I'll just focus on writing, or I focus on journalism. And then I'll do that and it'll be like, it's not as fulfilling. Okay, let me just stop marketing and writing and journalism for a bit, and then I'll focus on dancing. And that was great, but it's like, it's not as fulfilling. It's like when you have capacity for all of these things and you have the ability for all of these things, it's quite tricky. And in that process, it was like, how long was the tour? Spring tour, a couple of months, 3 or 4. I just kept having that over and over, and doubt. And despite that doubt, you still have to deliver on your targets. Marketing wise, you still have to stage and perform. You still have to do the Q&A. And if there are like small edits of text, we were quite flexible to make them. So you're open to all of these.
That's a lot.
Yeah, exactly. And throughout all of that, there's just the quiet voice isn't so quiet anymore. And it's like huge. It's like, I'm not good at this. I should stop this. And I thought about even telling Emma Jane a couple of times, like, can we find someone else to do this? Can we find someone else to do this? In the end, I didn't. And I'm glad I stuck with it, because I think it was just anxiety and being overwhelmed. But I think looking back at the first experience of not getting that gig and kind of taking a shot in my confidence, it's made it easier since to doubt and not completely, believe in the skills that I have, not only by themselves, but working in tandem. So part of my journey has been finding a way to truly make it an embodied and holistic multidisciplinary practice where they all kind of communicate with one another rather than they're quite fragmented. Because I think I thought about them as quite fragmented, and that's also why I didn't really believe in my own skills when it was called upon. I realized I kind of like dumped a lot, so
No, that was perfect. You know, this is making me think, like, how often do we have this experience very early on in our careers that we kind of almost like we make up what that means about ourselves, and then that affects at multiple stages when actually probably our perception, like you know, I don't know who this company is, but I have in my head decided who it is. And I've already decided that actually, like, it was destiny that you didn't get that job because you probably wouldn't have had a great time on that job. You know, so like, what if it wasn't what you thought it was in the beginning? Anyway, actually, it was like a little gift to you, and just how funny it is that we so often are then affected by that thing. You know, it goes over and over in our head and so on. And actually, it might be like a completely different reason that you got that didn't get the job to kind of what we, you know, what goes over and over in our thinking.
I think the absence of feedback really adds to that, you know, to being in that place of, oh, you know, like you said, question and doubt. Yeah, it's the unknown. Because at least if you receive some kind of feedback, you feel that you have like an awareness over, okay, this is why I didn't get it. And like, I can put that to bed, or I can put that to rest, or I can work on that thing. Or actually, like Ella said, oh, actually, maybe this company actually isn't the right company for me then. Or, you know, it's like it feels like it opens you up to more of a closure and kind of completion on it. But I think if you're in a space where you felt very confident and capable and comfortable, and then that's the outcome, it can throw you massively, like you said, and then really start to create or deepen those feelings of imposter syndrome. I wanted to ask, just listening to you when you were talking about the process for father figurine and all the different roles that you're inhabiting, like at any point did anyone approach you and say, I don't really think you're doing a very good job here, like I think you need to maybe streamline or step back, or was it all internal for you?
That's quite a good question, actually, because it was never outright. It wasn't said outright, but I could sense there was a picking up of my imposter syndrome and my doubt. And because I have my doubt, they could pick up on these signals and thought, maybe we should streamline, you know, maybe. And it wasn't said outright, but there were moments where it was, you know, do you need more support for this? I think maybe just focus on this for a bit. Like, don't worry about that. Don't think about that right now. Worry about that. Which I think was an approach to try to be helpful, but anxiety kind of latches onto the weirdest of things and just runs away with it. So me hearing that was an external doubt now adding to my internal doubt. Like, it's like, I don't think you should be doing this. Like, just focus on that, okay? Which also affected it. So it kind of goes into like a cycle where I'm doubting myself. They pick up on that doubt and then they doubt. Or seemingly I perceive it as they doubt. And then I doubt myself, seeing that they're doubting me. And, you know, it just keeps on and on.
I feel like
and
this
on.
is like a philosophy style, you know what I mean? Like which comes first?
The chicken or the egg?
And
Yeah.
so powerful.
Yeah. And it's that again, it's that making it mean something, isn't it? Because actually in any given situation, it could simply be, actually, Isaac is taking on a lot and it's overwhelming for anyone who who would be taking on all of that. And so we're going to offer more support or try and lighten the load. But actually, like you said, you make it mean something about your capability and about how well you're doing. And then it sends that energy out, and then that's picked up on, and so on and so forth.
And actually, you know how one of the symptoms of imposter syndrome is that kind of like believing that we have to do it all ourselves. Otherwise, we're an imposter. Like if you can't do everything yourself, then you don't belong. So like to kind of have that perception is, well, for me, certainly, you know, I can only speak for myself. There's this element of like unlearning that belief. In, you know, and in my work as a choreographer as well, of like, as the person in charge, I've got to hold everything together and I've got to know all the answers and I've got to be like perfect. And, you know what I mean? Like all of these ideas that actually, like, as we were kind of saying, as we first came into this space, that our well-being has to come first, because how are we going to practice this stuff if we're not actually living it, you know what I mean? And we're not really looking after our own mental health. And I do think there's such a connection between our mental health and imposter syndrome and this thinking.
Yes, I agree. Can you tell us a little bit, Isaac, about the masters you're doing and why you chose to do a masters in creative arts and mental health?
I think a lot of my journey has pointed me towards this direction, kind of understanding how much my psychology can affect my perception of my skills and my perception of how people view me. Because one thing I actually was thinking about and I've contended with a lot is like perfectionism and how that relates to validation. And I think those two things tie in so much to imposter syndrome, but maybe just for me, I don't know. I can speak for myself, but for my imposter syndrome that I've experienced in the past, it's been perfectionism and validation. So with this course, it's kind of understanding how art or like creative practices can be a useful, holistic mind-body intervention for psychological issues, illnesses from mild to severe. And that could be actual illnesses or ailments like schizophrenia or psychosis, or could just be general mental well-being, kind of like more of a prevention than an intervention. So prevention as stopping people from reaching the crisis point of breaking down, and not necessarily kind of being in a reactive sense where someone's already affected by something. Let's see how we can treat them. So I'm quite interested in that in a creative sense, and kind of putting that into practice of maintaining my own perception of things internally and externally, and also how to integrate that in your creative practice. I'm quite interested in, like, there is the academia is like such a huge bubble, and there is a wealth of information there that a lot of artists have made work on, but if you actually see the amount of research, you're like, oh wow, like this would have been so interesting to attach to that piece of work, whether as research or as reading or as like translation. So personally, I'm quite interested in translation, like of academic research into work, because I think this is where personally I think I've noticed it more as a reviewer, that there is a huge bubble also in the creative world where we talk about things, we explore things in a seemingly detached manner, as in like we show these things to ourselves, to our audiences, and you know, it's either well received or it's engaged critically or intellectually, but beyond that there is no resonance, or there isn't as much of a resonance as we would want as artists. And personally, I think what I've decided is that addition of academic research could be that resonance, because these are real world things, real world data, real world like situations being analyzed. These are real people in these case studies, and how does that then translate into a stage work where it isn't just about the artist and things they've experienced around themselves, or like limited research. Like this adds another layer to that. It may be conceited, I don't know, but personally that's what I've arrived at. So like all of these things work together. But going back to the validation and perfectionism thing, I think this course for me has been a validating thing in kind of understanding myself and my creative practice, and how I can then bridge that into mental health. Because thinking about my previous examples, if I did have an embodied practice, if I did have a way to manage my own mental health, or kind of have art as an intervention, I don't think that level of anxiety would have taken place, that level of doubt would have taken place, which then, you know, affects your skills, or how you see your own skills, either. And I think it's quite important to find a way to validate yourself, but also find a way to genuinely receive validation and internalize that, because I'm not sure if you can resonate with that, but if you don't have internal validation for yourself, a lot of external things kind of, you're just muted to. It's like, oh, you were great, great performance, blah, 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 you're kind of just, blasé about it. Like, yeah, cool, thank you, on to the next, in a sense. You don't receive that information as this is someone who's been impacted by your work or by your performance.
It just slides off, doesn't it?
Exactly. And I think part of that, in my experience, has been just that there hasn't been an internal form of validation. So whenever I meet validation externally or even criticism externally, it just feels like it makes it easier for imposter syndrome to take a hold of my every being and my skills and my talents. So all of these kind of play a part of why I went to that course.
And on that note, I've got 2 questions for you, Isaac. One, I think that is such a good point about, this not actually being able to receive the feedback that often is actually a compliment, and that kind of rejecting of it. I can really remember, like, on that tour with Russell Malafont, going around the world, being in these amazing theatres, people telling me it's good, and actually telling them why my performance could have been better. Like why couldn't I just say thank you? But if you have any advice, like if you have any thoughts of kind of how might our listeners be able to process that feedback as something positive. And I also, just thinking about what you said about this kind of research and these 2 worlds of academia and then the theatre world, of how might there be a place that the listener can go to find out about some of this research and access some of this wealth of knowledge that has already been, researched, that probably we could all benefit from reading.
The frustrating thing is a lot of academic research is behind a paywall, but there are some free papers, like Google Scholarly, for example. If you research any topic or theme that you're working on, a lot of things will pop up that are like free read, that you can access for a number of reads, whether it's 5, 10 or whatever, or is that generally just free. Because that's what I've been doing myself. Being in an institution like Queen Mary, I do access other things, but there are a lot of free papers you can read in that sense. And I think the information is already there, and I just don't want, first of all, myself or other artists to struggle to kind of almost reinvent the wheel whenever they're tackling things like mental health or other important themes. I don't know.
Yeah. And I guess this feels like it's very connected to that kind of stigma of that often we're all struggling with imposter syndrome, but no one's saying it, and that how do we break down these barriers so that it's okay to talk about it and know that you're not alone.
And I think also to know that it's something that can be managed, and it's also something that doesn't have to kind of dictate how you view yourself and the lens through which you kind of move through the world.
Yeah, definitely. And in terms of tools or like ways of coping with imposter syndrome, I mean, there's never a universal example, but for me, I think taking time has been quite important, and how you use that time is also quite important. So from my first example and experience, I kind of just turtled up and shut down. And I think you don't really want that reaction if you have a trusted support network, even like really close friends. I find that a lot of people who aren't in the creative world have a lot of really good feedback about what you're doing if you just go to them honestly and open up about your creative practice. So I think that is quite important, of sharing with trusted people who, no matter what they say, have your best interest in mind. And I think that's quite important to have. And taking the time to internalize what they say, because they have little to no notion about who you are outside of how they know you. They haven't seen you on stage. They haven't seen you, be the creative person you envision in your mind. So, or any feedback they give you will be quite honest and heartfelt. And just taking time to internalize that and building a robust way of, understanding the skills that you have, the weaknesses that you have, the strengths that you have, and really holding on to each one of them, so that when you do then find the ability to then move outwards and, present yourself to the world again, you don't feel like you don't belong. You belong in yourself. So any room you go into will have a certain sense of, you're there for a reason. And I think that's quite important to both know in yourself and also hear. because I really don't think we, or at least we try not to put as much value as in external validation as we should. I think it's really important to hear from other people how good you are at something or how important you are at something, because that's quite, it's needed. That's what community is about. It's not just believing in yourself that's it. You know, you can believe in yourself, but without the community to take that.
There's a dialogue and exchange there as well, right?
Exactly. So I think those, just off the top of my head, those are the things I would say to tackle imposter syndrome.
Thank you for listening. You can connect to us and our guests via the links in each episode's show notes. Before you go, we invite you to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of the goodness to come. And if you enjoyed today, perhaps tell a friend to tell a friend. We are always grateful for you, our listeners, for our fabulous guests, and to everyone who has contributed to and been a part of our journey here.
Our music is by Tomo Carter. Everything else is brought to you by us, the PowerUp Power Team.
I'm Mesma.
I am Ama Rouge. And we are PowerUp Podcast.